Hi, HRN listeners. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary, and we have a really fun campaign and an ask for you. This 15th anniversary tour is aiming to bring you closer to unique food and music experiences in some of the most exciting cities in America. All the while, we're raising funds to support our work empowering the next generation of food systems storytellers through our fellowship programs. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and be entered into a raffle in the city of your choice to win a dinner for two at a noteworthy restaurant and tickets for two to a concert at a prominent local venue. We have incredible partners in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Asheville, and Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who have donated a meal for two and two tickets to a concert of the winner's choice. And all donations help fund our fellowship programs, where we're helping to build essential workforce readiness skills and food system storytelling skills. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food and beverage radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Cheese State University. Cheese State University was created for dedicated cheese professionals seeking to deepen their knowledge, sharpen their skills, and build connections. Join them in the Ivy League of cheese education at cheesestateuniversity.com.
So you don't charm the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil runs his groove in them rhythm and blues that sound. It's gonna get you sun in the air.
Welcome back to The Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
And I'm Greg Benson, and it is a beautiful day here on the East Coast. Sother is not joining us. He's still West Coasting it out there with our friends in Los Angeles.
Southwest Coast.
Southwest, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
He's not up here with me, where it's also a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Finally.
I know.
Good Lord.
I know, about damn time. And yesterday was an especially beautiful day. The sun was shining. It was like 70 degrees here. And for a brief window of time in this country, Donald Trump was under arrest. And man, was that sweet. I got to go to one of my favorite beer bars in the world, a place called Max's here in Baltimore, which is also has some pretty big sports bar vibes, which I appreciate. And I was like, hey, can you put the indictment on one of these TVs? I was like, that was the big game yesterday, man.
Yeah.
I was loving it. What were you up to?
Oh my God. I'm so deep in a wedding, like I'm coming up to the buzzer on my game of wedding planning 2 weeks from now. And, so like I was doing some finalization of, catering menus, which means I was drinking. And
as one does, yeah. For research, it's important.
Yeah, exactly. But I was just like kind of watching all the news come through. It's kind of fun when you get more than like one breaking news New York Times update email in a day. That's the opposite of a very innocent, like people dying from a school or church shooting.
Yeah, recently. Exactly. Yeah.
But finally, some light is being shed on this fucking criminal.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, will it happen? Who knows? It's hard to say, but
I know that's the thing is like, I'm trying not to like project out to like what might happen because I'm like, I know what I want to happen. And I know we're not going to get that. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. I'm just trying to be very live, laugh, love about it and just like be grateful for living in the moment, I was like, it's probably going to be nothing. And probably, if anything, it's going to backfire on us because that's the timeline that we live in. But, for that moment, you gotta enjoy those little moments and find your bliss, as I did.
Man, it's crazy that Sother hasn't been on the show for 3 weeks. And, we're just talking about all these silver linings.
Yeah, I know. The Sunshine Cocktail Hour with Greg and Damon. That's what we're changing the name to.
He's going to be back next week. He's been, as we mentioned before, he's been in Southern California working on some projects. And we're very proud of him for, opening 1 billion bars every year. So that's cool. But
and he's been sending us updates about what he's working on too, and it sounds fucking awesome. But I don't want to steal his thunder by talking about it. I'll wait until he gets back. But yeah, maybe he's gonna come back with like a real SoCal attitude. You know, maybe he'll come back like, you know, having gotten a lot of vitamin D from being in the sun and just be like a super chill surfer dude for the rest of the show.
Yeah, he's probably gonna be wearing tie dye and you know,
definitely wearing tie dye.
He's gonna bring a longboard back, and we're happy for that. Then I guess one of us is gonna have to be deputized as the dark cloud of the show.
We can flip a coin every week. We can take turns.
We have to bring on another host to like be the bad cop. I don't know. Anyway, I do want to say that, you know, like planning this wedding has been crazy. Like essentially what it is, Greg, and I know that you know this probably from like as many bars as Sother opens, it's equaled by how many weddings you attend.
I've dabbled. Yes, I'm in my early 30s. Every single person I've ever met on planet Earth got married in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and what a crazy time to do that, right?
Yeah, right.
But the crazy thing about it is, it's basically like planning. It's just like planning a party, but like or an event or an activation, but it's like just like 1,000 times more stressful. Well, you know, like what's happening now with this is that, you know, we're getting a lot of like you get to ask for whatever you want, which is weird as an adult. It's kind of like an adult like child birthday party. So like you have a wedding registry and like you ask for all these stupid fucking things that like you don't need, you just kind of want. But you know, I'm about to be 42 this summer, and I'm like at that age where it's like I have all the things I want, you know, or need. So it's kind of weird. But the thing that I always run out of and always need more of, I actually got a package in the mail, and it got mixed in with a lot of these other packages that have been coming in as like wedding gifts. And you know, amongst the many things you got to do to plan a wedding, it's you know, like you got to do like tastings for like the catering and drinks and all that stuff. So after a lot of, I'm air quoting, you can't see it, but I'm doing tasting. I get home, and amongst these packages of, you know, like well-wishing wedding gifts, there was a box full of my favorite spirit, sample bottles of Mezcal.
Happy wedding to you.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, Jamie and I, we we did a very fancy, like kind of sloppily fancy, like because my whole thing is I lead tastings, you know, of and teach classes and seminars, about spirits, and so I'm like walking her through this tasting of all these different mezcals and telling her about like the different villages that produce certain styles and all stuff. And then I realize by the time we're getting through all these, I'm like, I'm too drunk to be talking about this and acting like I know what I'm talking about, even though I spent quite a bit of time in Oaxaca. But then I was like, you know, let's get the person on the show to actually walk us through this. If you will. See what I did there?
Jesus Christ.
It's terrible. It's early out here in California. So, and you know, our masterful library of segues that's leading us to our guest today.
It's going to be an all-time classic, that one.
Yeah. Dalton Christ. Welcome to the show. It's so awesome to have you here, and thank you for suffering through that intro.
I'm happy to be here, guys. And I thought the Oaxaca through this, I thought that was genius.
You like that? Okay, good.
Oh, I loved it.
I'll tell it to the publishers when I'm writing my book, and
it's great.
We'll see if that passes through. So you're coming, you're a fascinating character. You're in Mexico City right now, and you have some dogs with you, which I love. We were talking about this before the show. One of my favorite radio shows is the Buddy and Jim show on Outlaw Country and Sirius XM, and they always have like farm animals in the background, just kind of chickens clucking and like goats and cows making their noise and like dogs and birds, and like I love the fact that you have some dogs barking in the background. It's, our equivalent in New York City is sirens.
Sirens. Yeah.
But this is way more pleasant. I'm sure that Greg's going to bring us. He'll pipe in some sirens sometime in the show. But
yeah,
anyway,
I record this like out in the middle of nowhere. I just have like some Foley that.
Oh wait, you're in Baltimore. Sorry. Well, what is it, like just Orioles fans puking on sidewalks, or like what?
Yeah, it's a lot of that. Like, the occasional ATV. I did actually see a man in a public park with a python the other day. That was fun. Baltimore, it's always an adventure. But yeah, talk to us about what's going on in Mexico City, man. How are you these days, and what brought you there in the first place? Talk to us about how you wound up down there.
Yeah, so going from Iowa to Oaxaca to Mexico City.
I was going to say that, like that's just a natural progression. Like everyone moves from Dubuque, Iowa to Mexico. That's just like, that's kind of just the, that's like the retirement plan. It's like New Yorkers going to Florida.
Yeah, exactly. There's just a ton of Iowans that I play basketball with here and hang out with. No, I've not too many people from Iowa leave the state, even for school. I think out of all my friends, one or two went to Colorado and maybe one to LA. So it is a bit of a unique story. But from Iowa, I started traveling the world a lot for engineering and school. And I found a lot of jobs that took me to different places and fell in love with traveling. And then landing in Oaxaca, where I lived for 4.5 years, that story is about chasing a girl, a little college sweetheart. And eventually that led me to Maguey Melate, because I had to find a way to make money and live in Oaxaca. She kind of gave me a little bit of an ultimatum, like, my heart and soul is in this city. So I hope you like it, and I hope you figure out a way to stay. And at this point, I was unemployed for 2.5 years as I went through a MBA school in Germany. So, when I moved to Oaxaca, I had a lot of business ideas that I was tinkering around with. I had previously taught a class in opportunity recognition, how to come up with like sensible business ideas. But the only rule I had when I moved to Oaxaca that I agreed upon and others supported was, don't do anything with mezcal. Do not be another gringo that comes to Oaxaca and starts some sort of mezcal brand. So that was my very last intention, and I had no interest in starting a mezcal brand. I didn't really see the room for innovation there. Anyways, the company started, that relationship ran its course. We're still dear friends and in contact constantly, and co-parent 2 beautiful dogs. But after 4.5 years in Oaxaca, it's a pretty small town. It's my favorite city in the world, especially to visit. But it is quite small, and I needed a little more energy, a little more social opportunities, professional opportunities. So it was time to move to the big city. And I moved to Mexico City 9 months ago.
It's an incredible city, Mexico City, that is.
Mm-hmm.
But also Oaxaca City is, they're both beautiful places, but as you said, they are quite different energies, right? Like the thing is, like when you're in Oaxaca, there's a very, I don't know, it's the country, but also the city at the same time. There's like a little bit of, like, especially when you go to like the market and like the street food there is like incredible. It's like, in restaurants, but then you go to Mexico City and it's like Michelin star restaurants and like, top 50 best bars in the world. It's like, it's crazy different, but there's still like a through line, I think. And there's a spirit, if you will, that like that kind of resonates. And I mean, also, geez, I'm full of puns right now, but like there's also the spirit of Mezcal, like, so, but yeah, so what happened? What's the origin story of Melate?
Okay. It's a good story. It's a 2-part story. One of them, the storyline's very like active looking for a business idea, and the other one's just an extremely genuine organic experience. So I was studying entrepreneurship in Germany and in Colombia, and while I was in Colombia, writing my thesis as well as trying to make a little bit of money teaching online, I was like very disappointed with the institutional learning styles and how much money it costs, how much time goes into it, and how theory driven it was. So I wanted to take this amazing stuff I learned in entrepreneurial class and make it more concise and make it more relevant to my peers, using examples instead of, like maybe Ford, I'd use a weed store or something. So I made this class on coming up with business ideas. I love this concept I learned, but I wanted to go further in it. One of my students in the class was my girlfriend at the time. And at the end of every class, depending on what method I taught, you had homework. And this method was called the business model method. So you choose a business model, and in a concise description, you find a new application for it. So people get assigned the Uber model, the eBay or Airbnb model. She got assigned the Wine of the Month Club, the subscription.
By the way, I just want to say real quick that I love that you were unemployed for 2.5 years and you're talking like hardcore business, like innovation.
Yeah, I'm trying to teach a class.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll circle back to that. I'll circle back to that comment because it's relevant. So she got assigned Wine of the Month Club, and she would never do her homework, and I'd always help her out right before the next week's class started. And in Germany, when we first reconnected, she brought me a water bottle of Mezcal, and she said, try this. This is what we drink all the time in Mexico, and it's so important to the culture, and it's the drink of the gods. And at the time, I'm like, okay, why is the drink of the gods in a Dasani water bottle? But, later on, you'd start to really understand
that's legit.
The essence. That's the good
That's
stuff.
how the gods
that's
do it,
the
man.
good shit.
Yeah, that's the only way you want to drink it, or a Coca-Cola bottle. I even prefer the Coca-Cola bottle. So I tried it, and I was very not blown away by it. I was like, okay, it tastes really strong, and I don't know what to think about this, and thank you, but I'll stick to my German beers and German wine. I'm quite happy there. So I totally didn't appreciate Mezcal just taking a swig out of the water bottle. But when I did her homework for her, I said, well, what about that stuff I drank in Germany? Didn't you say there's like different agaves, just like there's different grapes? Okay, done. You do a Mezcal of the Month Club. So that idea surfaced, and I never thought about it. I never wrote it down. I kept a list of my top 25 ideas and like rotated one in when something good came along. That never made it. Because at that point, I already had decided absolutely Mezcal is not going to be part of my business life.
Right.
So about 6 months later, I'm in Oaxaca. It's my first month there. I mean, in the first day that I'm there, we drink a Mezcal before we go out for dinner. We drink one while we're waiting for our appetizers, one after dinner. Oh, it's time to end the night. Let's go have a Mezcal on a roof. So you just really start to understand the significance of it. And also like your palate's opening up, like the more you drink it, that first sip can be pretty rough for a lot of people, but the more you drink it, you start to acquire a taste.
Well, yeah, especially if you're like coming from like the land of Kolsch and Trocken Riesling, then you go to like a smoky like Chichicapa or like I mean it's going to be quite a bit different, especially something that's straight off the still that's served from a reused Coca-Cola bottle. It's like that stuff is like amazing, but it's quite a bit different,
Absolutely.
And I like the idea, like the the kind of the situational. I love drinking in situations where it's like the alcohol is part of the culture, right? And you were saying like it's like we have a mezcal before we go out and before like while we have our you said appetizers or like after dinner. It's kind of like drinking aquavit in like Scandinavian countries. It's like
Mhm.
it's just like everyone's just like making toast all the time through the whole meal, just so you can all do shots.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very much like a terroir based
Mhm.
situation too. It goes so well with like the food, and I feel like the food is such a big part of the culture, right? Because
Oh yeah.
the dining style, it's always like family together, and it's more about the harvest than it is anything else, and like in the family. And so like I feel like, to me, my personal experiences there, it really reflects on the like what comes from the land. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, the land is so significant to Mezcal, as well as the social aspect around Mezcal. And that's what I was picking up my first month is like, oh, this is like a social glue. This is what brings people together and continues the night forward.
Yeah.
So both. So anyways, after about a month of, hanging out in the city, I finally had an opportunity to go to my first palenque. It was a guy nicknamed Conejo in Minas, who I just visited last week. And of course, he has like a very dear place in my heart because this is where the business actually started. So we get to the palenque, and I have to take a little bit of a scenic route, a side story here. For 4 years in Chicago, I graduated Illinois with an engineering degree, general, and I went into the automation industry. And we're building these $8 million machines that are building the airplanes of the future, the Boeing 787s, the NASA space shuttles, drones, bombs, etc. And they're making airplanes out of plastic, and we're building those machines, and they have like over, I want to say 2,000 IO, so like sensors everywhere that go to the micron level. And I spent 4 years doing that type of work. So the most advanced automation that this world has seen to this point in some senses. And I go to this palenque, and the first thing the maestro does is he brings us over to the fermentation, and he sticks his hand in the fermentation and he apologizes to us. He says, sorry, I was hoping to start the distillation when you guys would arrive, but it's not going to be ready for about 6 more hours, I think. And right away, I had such a unique appreciation for what I just saw. I'm like, what? How did he tell that? And then,
It's like both ends of the spectrum of technology. It's like,
I mean, I just went from one extreme that was so extreme to probably the most other side of the spectrum in an extreme way. So I was just like, I really feel I had like a unique awe moment that was amplified compared to even the average person there. But, I learned the process while I was there. We went out to the fields and I saw these wild Karwinskis that were like 5 feet taller than me. And, at one point I tried to have a job with Anheuser-Busch. So I was familiar with the beer process and what went into that. And then, getting to meet him, he was in a 1-bedroom house, living room, bedroom, everything's together with his 4 kids, no Wi-Fi. And he just had this, it was a unique person to me. Like he had a different spirit about him. He was happy and carefree. I envied his life to some extent. And then the day finished. Sorry, I'm rambling here a bit, but bear with me.
That's what we do here.
Yeah.
All right. The day finished with like me and my 6 friends sitting in his tasting room, drinking all of his 20-liter garrafas. And I have like 2,000 pesos, enough for 2 bottles, but he has 20 expressions. And I'm having so much fun trying to decide which 2 bottles I'm going to have and talking to the other person. What do you think of this one? And just like trying to narrow it down. And it was so hard because there's like 6 that I absolutely wanted. And I got a good buzz going, and I walked out to his driveway just like high on life. This is my first Palenque visit. I had just moved to Oaxaca, and this day was so special to me, and I'm a little buzzed up. And I was just thinking to myself how beautiful this day was, and now the spirit. Everything I tasted, it tasted different to me than what I tasted in Oaxaca City in the bottle in Germany. And, I'd ask myself, what's changed? Have I just become accustomed to the flavor? But I really feel what changed that day was I had all this context around it. I met the producer, I saw the fermentation, I saw the agave, and it just like opened up like, oh, this Tepestate tastes different from this Madre Quiche that tastes different from this Marteño and this Tripone. So I really recognized what was missing in Germany for me was a sense of context. So the story is coming to an end here. I think to myself, it would be really cool if every bottle had a QR code on it and you could meet the producer and you could see photos of the plants, and maybe eventually you could hop online and talk to other people who tried that bottle or leave comments on Mezcal reviews. And I try to ignore this and just move on with my apartment finding app that wasn't working out at all. And the economics of it were very clear that this wasn't going to be a go. And I'm like, all right, don't start a Mezcal brand. But it would be really cool if you took that subscription idea from a year ago, but every bottle that arrived in that subscription had a QR code and this sense of context that transplanted somebody to the Mezcal Palenque tour, to the distillery. And I tried so hard to ignore it, but eventually after like 4 days, I did a quick Google search to see what was out there. I saw 4 competitors, which is great. You don't want to start an idea that nobody's come up with, because that's not a great indication. But the 4 competitors were much more like a curated shipping business. It wasn't working directly with independent producers in Mexico, and it wasn't experience oriented. So I tried to ignore it, but I spent, 2 or 4 hours creating a fake website. Hey, join the club, but we're sold out right now. Give us your email, and just ran $50 of Google AdWords. And everybody signed up, which I felt awful about. But I looked at how many people signed up to how much money I spent on Google, and I was like, okay, there's demand for this. And by the way, this would be a pretty kick-ass lifestyle business. That's the story.
Well, I want to say something quickly before we take a break, because we're about to do that. The sense of place is, I think, the most important part of mezcal, and what you found there is something that's really special. And I think the most important part of it is, like, as you mentioned, like kind of UX, like user experience. It's really about like the romance of a place, and the fact that you said, like, you were hanging out with this Palenque with a producer that, no Wi-Fi, hanging out in this small house. Like, it's just like it's almost as if like space and time doesn't like exist in the outside world when you're in Oaxaca, right? It's like you're just there doing the thing, and it's a beautiful, like, kind of magical lifestyle where you kind of get away from all the bullshit and you really get down to like back to earth, and
absolutely.
So let's talk about that after the break. But let's hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back in just a few. You're listening to the Speakeasy on Heritage Radio with our buddy Boelte. All right, back in a few.
Every glass of wine tells a story. And these stories reveal hidden histories, flavors, passions, and sometimes they unravel our darkest desires. In Wine Enthusiast's newest podcast, Vinfamous, journalist Ashley Smith dissects the underbelly of the wine world. We hear from the people who know what it means when the product of love and care becomes the source of greed, arson, even murder. Each episode takes listeners into the mysterious and historic world of winemaking and the crimes that have since become, well, Vinfamous. This podcast pairs well with wine lovers, history nerds, and crime junkies. So grab a glass of your favorite and follow the podcast to join as we delve into the twists and turns behind the all-time most shocking wine crimes. Follow Vinfamous on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and be sure to follow the show so you never miss a scandal. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. Cheers.
This episode is brought to you by Cheese State University. Cheese State University was created for dedicated cheese professionals seeking to deepen their knowledge, sharpen their skills, and build connections.
It feels like a gift to be able to give this gift to people, because I know that from my own experiences, I know how valuable consolidated, incredible training resources are.
They offer an in-depth education on all things cheese, as well as an active network for peer support and career development.
You can pop over to the Quad, which is our social networking and engagement app. And so that's a really fun and dynamic aspect of Cheese State University.
Cheese State's 3-part course is designed for seasoned pros and entry-level mongers alike, and covers all the skills one needs to perform on the cheese counter.
The structure of Cheese State University is all based on the Cheese State University Field Guide. And that is a 3-volume resource. It's all digital, online.
At the end of the course, students will be ready to ace the field guide assessment and earn their Cheese State Scholar Certificate.
Another resource is a video series where we tackle sort of like these thornier questions that you can get on the cheese counter, like what is rennet, and like why is this cheese so expensive, and can pregnant people even eat cheese?
At Cheese State, you're among experts, you're amongst scholars, you're among cheese lovers, and most importantly, you are a monger. Join them in the Ivy League of cheese education at cheesestateuniversity.com.
And we're back. You're listening to the Speakeasy on Heritage Radio Network. In the studio, we have Dalton Christ from Maguey Melate. This has been like, it's one of my favorite spirits in the world. And I thought I was cool for saying that, like, I'm an Okie. I'm from Oklahoma, and like from a ghost town there. I moved to New York, and then I now live in California. I thought it was cool for like being bi-coastal, and you've lived in like Germany and now Mexico City, and working in Mezcal. Super fucking cool. So what I wanted to call out a little bit was the fact that, like, if for the listeners out there, if you go to magueymelate.com, you can check out all these different varietals. And you said something earlier in the show about like living in Germany and recognizing the fact that when you were drinking some wines and different beers there, but like really wine, I work in the world of brandy these days, and like wine grape varietals and agave varietals kind of share a similar DNA in certain ways, in the fact that there's something you have to really kind of cultivate before, with beer. Sorry, Greg's the beer guy here in this organization. But it's made from grain. I mean, you just kind of like let it grow, and it does.
Oh wow, fighting words.
No, but like it's a seasonal or annual thing. Whereas like agave takes years, and you really have to care for it and watch over it and cultivate it. So what I like about these mezcals that you have kind of curated for everyone to try is that you call out the different agave varietals, whether it's Maguey, like you had mentioned before, Mexicano, Tepestate, which is one of my favorites. But then you also call out the producers by their first name on the website and on the bottle. I think, and they all have the signatures of the producer, and like on the label, that is. So talk to us about that. I mean, like, for you to meet some of these amazing people is great, but there must be a strong connection with the actual producers too, like a real friendship, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another topic we can talk about. The producers we originally worked with, trust and relationship building was ever. As we get further and further away from Oaxaca, that's actually a lot tougher to cultivate these relationships. We do it and we visit them, but it's a dynamic of the company that certainly changes, and we have great relationships with our producers that are in Durango and Michoacan. But one of the challenges of the business is these producers have to like you and respect you in order to cut those heads and tails properly, or to deliver your mezcal at all. So to cultivate that when these producers are quite far away takes a certain finesse and effort. So it's an interesting topic, but What was your original, Damon, question about the putting the producers on the bottle? I can speak to that more.
I just think it's a great thing to call out because, you know, when it comes down to the, as you had mentioned, the kind of cultivation, just like building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
There are other people out there, as you'd mentioned before, who are essentially sourcing mezcals and bringing them out to market.
Yeah,
but they're sometimes not necessarily putting the producers' names on the bottle.
So earlier we talked about, you know, not being a gringo, starting a mezcal brand in Mexico. For me, that was twofold for me. One, the whole concept around kind of colonialism and, you know, gringos coming in and stealing this culture and making all the money. It just has a strong stigma, especially in Oaxaca. And then for me, I don't know anything about brand focused business. You know, coming from construction and engineering, there's no branding in there. It's relationships and direct sales. So I was never a big brand guy, you know, even in terms of apparel and everything. So my thought, especially after reading some books, is I wanted to be viewed more as a logistics company than a brand. And the way I saw it was every producer is their brand. That's the brand that we're featuring. And we're just trying to get that brand to people's doors as efficiently as possible. And that's what I feel I'm good at, is just really focusing on the supply chain and how can we source the best mezcal all around Mexico in an efficient way? How can we get it all the way to people's doorsteps in an efficient way? So that's why, you know, we put the signature as the most center, largest part of the bottle, and then at the top of the bottle is the producer's name, and then way off to the side in the smallest font that the TTB would allow us to put the font in, we put our brand name Melate, which nobody can see, and it's almost off to the side of the bottle. It's as far to the side as they allow us. But where we really take it further, well, two steps further, our entire social media for the entire month, we don't make a sales pitch ever. We don't really show a picture of our bottle. The entire focus is on the place, person, process, and plant that went into that particular expression. And we always start in that order, like, here's the sense of place, here's the person behind it, here's what process made it unique, or here's what plant, you know, what's special about it. But after we put all that focus on that producer and introduce them to the world, this is where, you know, not too many brands do this, but it's one of our biggest assets, finding this producer, vetting them that they have outstanding mezcal, and then we give away their phone number and GPS location to every other brand in the world, every other importer, every restaurant in Oaxaca. And we even create and go through the effort of creating a Mezcaleropedia. And that's a map of Mexico. And you can go to each state and see the producers we work with, click on it, takes you to their page. And on their page, you have their phone number and GPS, and just can go visit them, can give them a call and start working with them. So we're really trying to promote them even once we've moved on. And, you know, we might not be working with them down the road. At least they have some exposure. And about 70%, 80% of the time, I don't think there's very tangible effects of us doing this, you know, not yet, but 20 to 30%, especially the producers that are close to Oaxaca, their business blows up, like Rosario and Minas. I mean, we didn't single-handedly make her the success she is now, but right when she started her Palenque during the pandemic, and then we featured her and introduced her to 5,000 people in the US, everybody goes and visits her. So I'd say, like, you know, a couple producers a year really benefit financially and have more exposure and contacts from this effort of putting out their phone number and GPS location.
I would say to all of our listeners out there, I mean, you know, our listeners are just like the coolest people anyways. They've probably been to Oaxaca already, but if you haven't, this sense of place is really important for what mezcal is. I mean, I would say any spirit, wine, beer, food. I mean, like, go to the place where it comes from and check it out, and also support the people who are making it. Like, so
Yeah, man.
I like the idea of people visiting the Palenque and going to, like, and bring in fucking drink water out of a bottle while you're there. Drink it so you can refill the bottle with the mezcal, like, right off the still, because that's the way the pros do it, right? But
Yeah.
if you can't do that, you can go to melate.com and buy bottles straight from source, which I think is really cool. This is I do want to say something, like, on a personal note. Like, for me, like, Sother and I, Sother's not here today, but Sother and I, our last trip before the pandemic, our last, like, work trip, for the Speakeasy Radio Show, was to Oaxaca. And we'd both been to Mexico before. We've been to like, to Jalisco for tequila trips, and, like, been down to Oaxaca for mezcal, and you mentioned Michoacan. But it was a really important trip for Sother and I, because it was our last trip before the pandemic, and we brought back some really amazing mezcals. And we went to the Palenques, and we had all these, like, plastic reused water bottles and Coca-Cola bottles and stuff like that. And like, I was sitting there at home wearing a mask in my home. I'm kidding. I wasn't wearing a mask in my home, but
It was like a luchador mask. It wasn't like a COVID
exactly.
mask. It was the pandemic. We all had to do what we had to do.
Yeah, we all got a little weird there, and some of us stayed weird. But to me, going to Oaxaca and having these mezcals, and more importantly, the experience to go along with it, I think that's really important. It got me through those early days of the pandemic. I was just like, it transported me, because, like, every time I would take a sip of, this barril, or, like, whatever it might be, like, it took me right back there. And I feel like it's more powerful. I think that mezcal is more powerful in that kind of sense memory than, say, going to Kentucky and having some bourbon and then bringing it back. And it's like, well, tastes different here than it did there. It's always going to taste different, a little different when you're back home, but it doesn't necessarily transport me back to Kentucky, or, like, even going to cognac and, like, tasting it and being like, oh, no, this reminds me of, like, being on a boat on the Charente River, like, but mezcal is very powerful in that way.
Yeah.
It's important for understanding where it comes from and how it's made, and it's very humble and a beautiful thing. And so I would say that, like, I commend you for like, showcasing the producers and where these things are made, and go out to Durango and, like, get deep into it. It's but it's,
and
I don't know, to me, it's the most important thing.
I would just add to that, the people who are the most diehard Maguey Melate fans in the club, they're always the people who have actually gone to Mexico and visited the Palenque, and then they get so much value out of, they feel like they're visiting a new Palenque every time their new bottle arrives, because in order to get transplanted to Mexico from that bottle, you need to have had to been there to begin with.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, save your money on the subscription. Don't sign up for the subscription, because you can buy a plane ticket for almost a year's worth of subscription, and just follow our social media and use magueymelate.com/mescaleropedia and go out to these producers directly. Because I know once you go out to the producers directly and you see how special that trip is that day, you're going to come back to the States and be like, I want to have that experience every month. So that would be my recommendation is you follow us on social media. Every month is a trip to a Palenque. And we post the GPS. So if you see something you like, you can plan your trip around there, hire tour guides. We have services. And the best way to experience Mezcal is it's not the club. It's going to Oaxaca and meeting these people and shaking their hand and hearing them speak. You have to go to Mexico directly to get the true, most authentic experience out of Mezcal. Absolutely. And then the club is second best.
Yeah. There you go. Still got to plug it. But yeah, I mean, like, and it just gives you a different respect for, I think a lot of Americans are just used to like anything that's agave, they just shoot it. And once you go there and you see how things are made, I certainly got back and was like, all right, I'm just going to, like, it changed from having a copita or, a shot glass of mezcal to, like I started putting in a wine glass and just like sipping on it, it just changes your understanding of it. And I really appreciate you being on the show today. We're here at the end, and everyone go check out Melate.com and on Instagram. And but also, as you mentioned, fucking go there. Yeah. Just go there. I think we're probably due for another radio trip. Actually, when we went last time, Greg wasn't on the show yet, so we'll have to get all three of us down there. We should meet you down there, actually, Dalton.
Absolutely. I would love to take you guys out to some special producers with special personalities. They're all special, but some really make for an outstanding experience.
Hell yeah. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Well, let's do it. Awesome. Thanks again, Dalton, for being on the show today and talking with us about Maguey Melate. Really fun. I always love talking about mezcal. It's, like I said, one of my favorite spirits.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
And when I get home tonight, I'll see if I have any left from my very formal mezcal tasting with my soon-to-be wife. Anyway,
if not, congratulations on the wedding.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll see if I make it through.
You got 2 more weeks. You can do it.
Yeah, well, we'll see if she doesn't like leave me before then. But if that happens, I'm moving to Mexico City, and we're going to be hanging out and getting into trouble together. All right, good. That's it for the Speakeasy this week. Check out Heritage Radio Network for many more programs like this one. Until next week, salud.
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 So you don't shun the devil with your rock.
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
It's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.